Hello and welcome back to Crit and Crit. I'm Scint,
I'm Axion.
and we are wrapping up our playthrough of EG and discussion of Ender's Game. You don't want to do that. That's the door to double health bars for the boss.
Let's not do that.
I'd go with attack.
Yeah, I was looking for it. Gotta love how
Honestly,
the plot-required doors are only security level 1.
Yeah. But yeah. So, finishing up with our discussion of Ender's Game, we've mentioned quite a bit that there's quite a few things throughout the story, either as a focus or just as a small background element barely commented on in passing, that kind of make you go oof if you're reading it today. Or I think for some people, even if you were reading it back in the 80s. There's a lot going on here. So let's kind of ease in. First thing we talk about is, when Ender is talking to Graf to get recruited to battle school, Graf mentions that religions have largely been renounced by good, compliant people of the hegemony, meaning, well, the author's views are kind of there, because we have Ender's parents who are a nominally ex-Catholic and ex-Mormon who are still practicing. Ender's mother objects to anyone figuring out she's from Utah lest they suspect that she is a former or still practicing Mormon, but did not want her children baptized Catholic by Ender's father, who overrode her anyway. So there'd be some very easy to find anti-Christian rhetoric there, or you would also find it as extremely pro-Christian rhetoric because, look, they're fighting the system. Because I think we're meant to see the hegemony as very much in the wrong, except we never do. The hegemony is never disbanded, even for all the flaws that get pointed out with it. I think we're supposed to say, yeah, things are bad, but look how much better they are with this system in place.
And if
Which
I
is
remember
not the message I
correctly,
took away.
yeah, and if I remember correctly, they don't even the hegemony does not even go away in the sequels. It is still there. It's just less focused because the sequels don't take place on Earth.
Yep. So, other thing we talked about, like, effectively rampant child abuse because we're grooming child soldiers from the ripe old age of first grade to learn how to effectively use tactics and kill enemy soldiers. Yeah, in the age we're in with the uniquely American issue of almost daily school shootings, that is a very, very hard pill to swallow. And yes, this was written in the 80s before they had become the widespread phenomenon they are today, but it boggles me that no one really saw any issue with the situation of child soldiers at that young an age at publication. And they very well could have. I believe this book predates me a bit, and I didn't read it again until the very early 2010s, so I missed the zeitgeist when it first came out. I'll just say that right now. But yeah, it's honestly for a book that's just about, look, we're going to let you play computer games and learn tactics and you'll basically play freeze tag in space. There's a lot of violence in there with children beating each other up when they think the adults aren't looking, and yeah. And this is completely turned a blind eye on by the higher ups. The adults in charge of protecting these kids just let it happen. That, I think, would not age well today either, with a lot of discussion going around what motivates mass shootings and such, which I'm not sure that I fully agree that it's always caused by bullying. I think there's always just some people are inherently violent, and as soon as they're given a tool and have an outlet, they'll do it. But that's a can of worms I don't feel like opening today. Yes. I like how he cocks the gun instead of just stepping on you.
Getting some Yoshi Island vibes.
Yep. Getting your frame rate to stop. Yep. Yep, you gotta be careful with your dodges or bad things are gonna happen. You can also use your resonance reflector to reflect those blue orbs back, but I think you're gonna have a hard time anyway.
It's about to say, let me just,
It's like, I think actually you might have to, so you're gonna want to get the reflector out. Yeah, because those you do not want to let have. Because if he has those cycling around him, he gets a super weapon.
Gotcha.
Reflector, not detonator.
That's mean. Okay, apparently you can't jump both of those.
No, the white ones went at the end of his salvo.
Anyway, story.
Sorry, I lost track of where I was because you don't know game mechanics.
Of course. Fired it too soon.
Yep.
So how do I destroy them now?
So we're gonna see what happens. You don't.
That's annoying.
You gotta try to stop getting free. Yep. Jump.
Anyway, tell the story, let me fight.
I'm trying! Sorry, I'm trying to also let you have input on this too, but...
You talk, I fight. I don't think we can do both.
Okay. So, still on the religious theme, there's also some pretty uncomfortable anti-Semitism that shows up. Mostly we see this in the character of, who is affectionately called Rose the Nose, who is actually a pretty decent guy, but the fact that they explicitly call that out, the fact that they call special attention to his heritage and potentially faith, yeah, especially just how current events tend to be with that. They also kind of refer to him kind of derogatorily with that. At least that's my read on him. So, good character, badly portrayed, I guess is the nice way to put it. But I don't know what to do with the book otherwise. I just mention it because better than ignoring it, I guess. There you go. I'm not really sure how to read, like, the characters from other nations without wondering if they leaned into, like, punch-out level stereotyping. Because there's not a whole lot of focus given. I believe Dink is Dutch, but he's portrayed pretty well. I remember Eli was mentioned, I believe. I don't remember where they said he was from, but he was basically Ender's only friend before he got transferred to a different unit, because as a recurring theme, Ender was not allowed to have friends.
Eli was Muslim.
Yeah. But that doesn't necessarily to a country, but...
I was about to get to that. He was said to be somewhere from the Middle East. They did not specify which country.
Gotcha. Yeah, makes sense. So, yeah. But he at least got a nice portrayal.
Yep, but this was admittedly written before Muslims became the bogeyman of American politics.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, in fact, at the time, the people in much of the Middle East were our allies because they were providing us with oil and helping us against the Russians. And on that note, the Russians are the primary country that is not part of the hegemony. Oh, hey, you can shoot that back. Awesome.
Yeah, if you just want to be careful with your timing, because if you,
If I do it too late.
Yeah.
That was too close.
At least you stood up at the safe zone.
Yeah, I've been good about that. Or getting lucky about that. I also keep forgetting that when he lands, he sends a shockwave. Yep. But yeah, so from the perspective of someone who is very clearly an American writing in the 80s, it is noticeable that the primary antagonists are characters who are Russian, characters who are Jewish.
Well, I don't think Rose was especially antagonistic. He was just basically ineffective and lazy, as portrayed, because he didn't want to take command over from Dink, I believe, was the issue. So he wasn't an antagonist, but it wasn't exactly a great portrayal.
Yeah. Point being, them and people who are Russian and from Russian-affiliated states like, I believe, Poland was mentioned badly.
But that's why you don't want to let it get the 3 orbs.
So noted. But yeah, Poland is mentioned as a state that's non-compliant with the hegemony. Russia is the leader of the anti-hegemonic states. And our allies are... I didn't have time to jump. Right back in his face.
Yeah, and I find it interesting that he goes to the trouble of showing where all these characters are from and a little bit about what they're like and what their home life was like, because I was flipping back through to find more things. Dink mentioned to Ender that, hey, I know nobody's supposed to talk about home, but we came from somewhere. Battle School didn't create us, you know. Battle School doesn't create anything. It just destroys, and we all remember things from home. Maybe not good things, but we remember, and then we lie and pretend that, look, why is it that nobody talks about home ever? Doesn't that tell you how important it is? So they're not even supposed to talk about where they're from because they need to be good soldiers who are just here to protect Earth. But even the kids know, like, look, home is really important. We gotta know what we're fighting for. We gotta have things that are important to us. We have to know who we are, or what good are we. But, yeah, so...
Yep.
Even though they're going... It seems very contradictory to go out of his way to create an attempt at a diverse cast and then undermine it with, but that doesn't matter because we're soldiers of Battle School. It just seems contradictory. And maybe it's like that way by design.
I mean, a tyranny is, in its description, by its nature, discriminatory and contradictory. Hey, I got 2 of them. Nice.
Yay.
I don't know if it matters. They're not really making much of a noticeable effect on his health bar.
Alright, so next thing I think I guess we could talk about would be sexism. There are, to my knowledge, 3 named female characters in the book. I don't actually remember Ender's mother's name, but Mrs. Wiggin counts. Valentine Wiggin, and then Petra, one of Ender's other only friends in Battle School. I think those are the only 3. All these other characters are in there, but they're all guys, and, well, that's probably just because Battle School still has the whole stigma against women in the military that is still an ongoing debate today. It's not something I feel qualified to weigh in on, as I am over the draftable age, but I don't know. I don't see anything wrong with if you want to serve your country and you are physically capable thereof, go right on ahead. It's not something I think I would be good at. But yeah, just those 3 characters, and Valentine specifically, they go out of their way to have Ender have 2 siblings who failed their tests, and make sure that the sister was the one who was too compassionate to be the general they needed. Which leads heavily into some pretty gendered stereotypes of boys are the tough ones and girls are the soft ones, which probably, I don't know, if it wasn't intentional, was very subconsciously chosen. It's hard to say which. Petra calls attention to the fact that she is the only girl in the particular army that Ender is assigned to. I'm not sure if there are other girls in Battle School. But
none are ever mentioned.
However, he doesn't actually go through and give us here's the entire class roster that's going to be killing y'all this year. So there could be, but if they're there, they are likely an extreme minority among the soldiers that they're training up. Which doesn't make sense considering, honestly, in elementary age, you probably don't have that much of a difference in terms of physical capability or mental capability. You just have kids with fast reflexes. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to discriminate to that level. But they seem to be primarily targeting boys, and maybe that's just a product of this being written in the 80s.
Yep.
But this does make it awkward for another reason. We've managed to go this entire series without talking about the fact that these kids are constantly naked, and it's really uncomfortable.
It really is, and the only exception...
You win!
To go back to the sexism thing, is when Petra is around, she is allowed to be naked, and all the boys are supposed to be dressed when they're around her, according to their commander. I forget which commander was in charge at that time.
Yep, I've been trying to find that page, and I have not yet. But yeah, so Ender, when he's transferred to Bonzo's army, is told to always be in his uniform, which calls attention to the fact that sometimes the kids are not. And they wear these jumpsuits, so it's not just like, hey, it's just not just like, hey, the boy's going to take his shirt off and he's just going to be in his swim trunks and whatever, like you'd see at the pool, it's fine. It's either you are fully covered or you are fully naked. And they are fully naked when Bonzo jumps Ender in the bathroom. With a crowd of people.
To be fair, that's the bathroom and Ender's taking a shower, and that's the only place, as far as I can tell, in the entire story where someone being naked would have had been normal.
Yes, but it means you get to have a fight scene between children who are not wearing anything, which makes it even more uncomfortable with the fact that the kids are beating the crap out of each other. And the commanders seem fully aware of this and don't see anything wrong with the situation they put these kids in. Maybe it's because the kids are too young to have gone through puberty and therefore have thoughts that would make it awkward. And often in literature, nudity does work as a symbol for innocence. And maybe this is just my bias as an American showing here, because nudity has been very far removed from just purely symbolizing innocence in most American media. So that could be my fault too, but this is also an American novel, which makes me wonder even more, and I'm vastly overthinking this whole situation, but the fact that there is so much attention put on the fact that these children are often wearing nothing makes a lot of what goes on in Battle School extremely uncomfortable to read. But yeah, there's a whole lot of awkward that we've mentioned, like the whole blind militarism, the stereotyping of various nations and faith groups, negative portrayals of various groups because they only get one representative, awkward reflections of real-life politics at the time and other forces going on throughout the world. Yeah, it's a mess. I can see how elements of the story were vastly influential to other genres of science fiction, and if it got other people to read, I'm grateful to it for that, but my thoughts on Ender's Game are just... it's meh. It is a book that exists. I did not find the main character particularly compelling. I did not find a lot of the conflict built up to be particularly believable. And mostly it just serves to me to highlight a lot of uncomfortable aspects of society that I'm not sure were at all the author's intention in writing the book.
And that brings us to the inevitable discussion of Card himself.
Of which I know very little.
Card was a fairly reclusive figure after writing the books through the 80s and early 90s. He rarely gave interviews. He rarely made public speaking engagements. To my knowledge, I'm I may be misthinking of certain things, but to my knowledge, he was fairly withdrawn from public life after writing his books. He would make very rare occasional appearances, but he typically kept to himself. And a lot of people grew up on Ender's Game, and while it was fairly meh for you, and I remember liking it as a child, but in retrospect, it has a lot of problems.
Like I said, I did not grow up with Ender's Game. I read it on the recommendation of a friend when I was in college, and by that point, I was very far outside the target audience. I fully acknowledge that I was reading outside my intended
Right.
demographic, so of course it's going to hit differently. Just like if I had read Harry Potter for the first time today, I would not look at it as fondly as I still do in a lot of respects, because that series was my childhood, even if, as with much of Card's work for many people, the author themselves has made the work somewhat uncomfortable to revisit in retrospect.
And that
I can't.
is
Yeah.
basically what happened. When the internet started becoming a thing in the early 2000s, Card stopped being so reclusive. He started to have a very active online presence. And while at first that was simply being very communicative with his fans and being very open about his projects, he very quickly started going the route of J.K. Rowling and started very vocally and very extensively presenting his personal views and personal politics. And those views and politics were very, very regressive. He came out as extremely hostile to homosexual and transsexual or transgender people. Sorry, my misspeak. He came out very hostile to non-Christian religions, particularly Muslims, and to a slightly lesser extent Jews. So no, the incidents with Rose was not abnormal. And he became very aggressive and outspoken on social media about his views.
And yeah, I never researched those in depth. Like, I had heard in passing that, like, so from various people I hear, like, I liked these books when I was younger, but the author has said things that make me no longer comfortable, and I just left it there because, well, I had not really intended to read the books, and therefore it didn't really affect me at the time. So,
And that's what a lot of people had to go through, because reading Ender's Game, for all its flaws, especially at the end, with how Ender interacts with his classmates, and even the way he thinks about and interacts with the aliens, there is this perspective of acceptance and understanding that people are different and need to be approached with keeping their differences respected and recognized. And then you have 20, 30 years later, Card coming out and being this hyper regressive, very xenophobic, very aggressive spokesperson in an extremely hostile way. And remember, this is the early 2000s. We are in the middle of the Iraq War. We are in the early days of the internet. This extended through the Obama presidency, which he had many unpleasant things to say about. And in the light of everything that was going on, he was putting himself out there as this really outspoken, really hostile person. And people who had taken the message of understanding and acceptance from his books, and especially from the sequels, because the main thing that the sequels are about is following up on Ender's promise at the end to find the aliens a place they can live where the queen can hatch and breed and rebuild their species, and he pulls it off. And the final book is literally about bridging the gap between humanity and the aliens to allow them to communicate openly and easily and to coexist side by side, living on the same world instead of just, here's a world for you to live on, drop you here, make sure you survive long enough to reproduce, okay, we're done, bye. So Card has these stories that he's written that are all about finding the similarities and bridging the gaps between humanity and this very alien species that operates in a completely unfathomable way to most readers, and to make both sides understand each other and be able to cooperate and live together. And then Card comes out 20 years later and can't even extend that same hand of cooperation and understanding to fellow humans because their skin's the wrong color, they worship the wrong deity, or they like people the wrong way.
And
And
yeah, I
this,
guess we have to raise the debate again. How much can you retain your childhood memories of something you enjoyed as a child with the newfound context of it was not created with the mindset that the books promised,
and it's,
or that mindset has changed and now wants to retroactively alter the books you read?
and honestly, the only difference between these people's relationship with Card and similar people's relationship with Rowling is that one group is 20 years older.
No, there's another difference. Harry was likable.
I will give Ender this. He gets better in the sequels.
Which I'm probably not going to read because I did not enjoy this experience. But thank you for joining us through our journey through EG and Ender's Game. And just as with Ender, we leave EG on a barely hanging on world trying to rebuild a species in the wake of an alien invasion. See you next time.
See ya.